I'm listening to my doctor tell me that I have type 2 diabetes, and I'm thinking, how can that be? I'm a vegetarian. Vegetarians are healthy. I have lived a healthy lifestyle. How can I be diabetic? My doctor continues to explain that he's going to have to prescribe drugs unless I can lose weight. I thought there's a way out of this nightmare. So, how do I lose weight? Well, said the doctor, and he gave me the usual lecture that my intake of calories needs to be less than the calories that I use. That means that I've got to diet and get more exercise. So I said, well, how do I diet? And he said, well, cut sugar out of your diet. If it tastes sweet, don't eat it. If it tastes sweet, don't eat it. Oh, I thought, well, that's simple enough. I think I might be able to do that. How did I get into this mess? Because I'd been a vegetarian since 1986. That meeting with the doctor was around about 2010. So I'd been a vegetarian for nearly 25 years. And I thought I was living a healthy lifestyle. I thought I was aware of the things that I needed to do to remain healthy. Soon after I became a vegetarian, I found a little book. I only had it for 2 or 3 days, so I never used it, but it was called Junk Food Vegetarianism, and it amused me, and I sometimes joke about being a junk food vegetarian. But I thought that was only a joke. I didn't notice those incremental ways in which I was drifting into bad habits. I was someone who, when I went for a coffee, I'd have a cake with it. I was someone who always accepted a biscuit when it was offered. And as I continued uh, exploring my diet, one of the big things I discovered that was contributing to my weight were healthy things like fruit juice and smoothies. I think the reason I got into this predicament was because of the reasons why I was vegetarian. And this always has been and still is to do with factory farming. I remember uh, sometime in the 12 months before I became a vegetarian, my parents saw a documentary about factory farms on the television, and they were actually quite shaken by it. I didn't have a telly in those days, still don't actually, so I would never have seen that. But I was certainly moved by their response to that documentary, and I think they reduced their meat eating. But I went further and became fully vegetarian, and the reason for that was my girlfriend, who was vegetarian, for those same reasons, and I was cooking for her and gradually reducing meat eating over 2 or 3 years, and and she persuaded me, as girlfriends and boyfriends often do, to take the plunge and become a vegetarian. And indeed, I remember her for that reason. We split up many, many years ago. So there I am, trying to work out how to diet. But cutting the sugar out was reasonably easy, and I then also cut out takeaways and ready meals, and I also, during the period when I was dieting, had a carb curfew, and that means after 5 o'clock in the evening you cut out potatoes, bread, rice and pasta, because it's those things that remain in the bloodstream, and because you're not exercising during the night, it tends to be put on as fat. And I also decided to take more exercise, and the easiest form of exercise is walking. And so I started to walk a lot more. About 6 months in, I was walking downhill in the pouring rain, and I slipped and aquaglided down the hill and tore a ligament in my right foot, which meant that in effect I could hardly walk for 3 months. And during that time I lost about a third of my body weight. I do exercise and walk every day now because I think that exercise is important for health, but it's the diet that actually helped me to lose weight. So much so that when I went back to that same doctor a few years later and he had my blood test results, he was able to tell me that everything was absolutely satisfactory, and indeed I was in his top 3 patients. And he said, "How did you do it? How did you lose all that weight?" And I said, "Well, I followed your advice." And he looked blank and he said, "Well, what did I say?" And I said, "Well, if it tastes sweet, don't eat it." He had no recollection of that conversation at all, which I suppose makes sense. So here I am. I'm still vegetarian for much the same reasons, and I'm still vegetarian for much the same reasons, and I would add to that climate change, which because factory farming and intensive farming is adding more and more methane to the atmosphere through the animals. However, I'm not vegetarian. I'm not vegan. I am not vegan because I do know that to farm organically you need manure, and manure comes from animals. So I think it would be counterproductive to cut meat out of everyone's diets forever. I think we need people who are vegetarian or vegan to cut down the overall consumption of meat. But in time, occasional meat eating will still be possible. To put it, the way I would put it is that if I lived on an organic farm, I would most likely eat meat from the farm, because I believe that the only meat you should eat is meat from animals that you know personally. So I'm in good health now, facing up to the restrictions on coronavirus, and I'm hoping that the permission to go out and exercise every day is not going to be rescinded, because that's still the easiest way for me to get the exercise that I need. It's essential as you get older to be in good health, and so it's really important that you do not let your principles clash with your health needs. So that's my message. Thank you. Goodbye.